Hello, my name's Gavin, this is Genre Books, and this is episode 10 of the A to Z of Lost Penguins, the list of Lost Penguins, looking at titles that have been dropped from the Penguin Classics range. To narrow things down, this is the range I'm talking about, specifically beginning with the books that looked like this, continuing to the sort of beige, creamy coloured bordered books with the colour coding, and I'm looking specifically at works that disappeared from when the range looked like this. It has since had another two manifestations. There was the fairly short-lived editions that looked like this, and we now have a more somber looking, a little bit more generic looking design. I miss the beige cream design, and this is what I've been looking at. Again, as usual, thanks to my wife for doing a lot of the legwork in finding these titles. I've gone and had a dig around and had a brief look at the titles so that I have something to talk about. Today we're looking at the letter P, and there are 10 titles on the list. We begin with a work in translation from the French, the Provincial Letters of Blaise Pascal. So, physicist, inventor of the mechanical calculator, mathematician. He has an SI unit named after him. He does still retain some works in the Penguin Classics range. His Pensée remains in print, but this book, the Provincial Letters, have fallen by the wayside. These letters are more involved with the religious side of Pascal. He was one of the main proponents and prime movers of a Catholic movement called Jansenism, and these letters are arguments or an examination of the conflict between Jansenism and the Jesuits. Possibly not one I'm going to read, but I don't know. He was certainly an intelligent chap, Pascal. I'm sure there'll be some nuggets of wisdom in there somewhere, if I see it in the wild. Next up is a work from the 1890s from the writer Walter Pater, and it is a novel of sorts, Marius the Epicurean. Pater was better known as an art critic and literary critic. He was the tutor of Gerard Manley Hopkins. This work, Marius the Epicurean, expanded on a style of writing he had pioneered, which just give character sketches, not much in the way of plot, but a little bit more with these longer novel length works. This novel is a philosophical novel. It follows Marius, who is not a real historical figure. He's from Pater's imagination, living in Rome at the time of sort of Marcus Aurelius. He's an Epicurean, and he uses that as a platform to lionize, propound his own theories on aestheticism, which was, largely taking root in late 19th century England. For the third book, we skip back a little bit, and this is a collection or joining of two novellas by Thomas Love Peacock. He's better known as a poet, and he was friends with a fair few other poets. He was notably a friend of Shelley, but as well as being a poet, he's a novelist and also an officer in the East India Company. Both of these novellas are Gothic, as you might expect an early 19th century novella from a poet to be. But they're also satirical. And you can see certainly in the first of these, Nightmare Abbey, published the same year, I think, as Northanger Abbey, characters who are based on Byron, on Shelley, on Coleridge, and on Claire Clairmont, or possibly Mary Shelley. Not entirely sure. The second novella, was it Crotchet or Crochet? Castle? Not entirely sure of the pronunciation. Is less on the Gothic side, still retaining the satirical edge. Less well known than Nightmare Abbey, but you get the two books for the price of one here. 4 books in, and we haven't had a work of poetry dropped yet. That changes. The Penguin Book of Restoration Verse. There are an awful lot of poets represented in this book. Probably the most famous names: Milton, Dryden, Andrew Marvell, Alfred Bem, Restoration playwrights who were also poets, such as William Congreve and William Wycherley. We have libertines, lovers, moralists, chroniclers, translators taking older works, and on the cover, another poet who I'm not sure she appears in this collection. I'm happy to stand corrected. I don't have a copy, but the Countess of Pembroke. We'll be seeing her again before the end of this episode, but not until we've dropped Edgar Allan Poe, another very famous writer. Fame, success, reputation count for nothing in the Penguin Classics world. Obviously, Poe is known for his, as well as his beginning of the detective story, he's obviously best known for his horror side. Not as well known for his comedies and satires. Now, this is Edgar Allan Poe, Comedies and Satires. This also went under another title, The Other Poe, delineating the different types of writing that he was doing. But these are his mostly non-horror offerings, although I do notice that A Premature Burial is included here, which I hadn't ever seen it as comedic or satirical before. What do I know? There is still plenty here that is absurd and grotesque, but we have works, King Pest, The Businessman, and Diddling considered as one of the exact sciences. Going much further back now, and more modern translations of ancient works. I mean, this is obviously, modern is relative. This is still from, I think, the late 60s. Poems from the Sanskrit, translated and introduced by John Brough. There are 2 selections in this collection from Kalidasa. Now, you're going to have to excuse my pronunciation. There is the Vikram Ovasaya and the Kumara Sambhava, and a selection of other 4th century works that aren't, for a change, the Bhagavad Gita or the Kama Sutra, which is usually the Sanskrit works people are most familiar with. As this episode is pieces beginning with P, we are now catching up with the poetry that's being dropped. So lots of poetry collections. This is now poetry of the 1890s. Oscar Wilde, A.E. Housman, Thomas Hardy, W.B. Yeats, Rudyard Kipling. all being dropped. And if you're a poet whose name begins with a P, you're in double jeopardy. Propertius, the poems. Sextus Propertius, to give the only part of his name that we know, not likely to be his full name. We certainly don't have many of his poems left. We have what is now called his elegies. There are about 90 of them. He was a friend of Virgil, and his patron was very close to Marcus Aurelius, so he was only one step removed from the patronage of the main man. Tom Stoppard says that it is from Propertius that we get our notion of romantic love. That may be a little contentious, but I've not read these poems, so I'm not in a position to judge. We have seen some fairly famous authors dropped in this series. We have seen some famous titles dropped, some very surprising ones. Usually this is because of it being a particular translation. Maybe a new translation is now being preferred in the Penguin Classics range, even to the extent of, I think it was Dryden, his Homer translation got dropped. But you probably won't get more famous than the Psalms. And the last two books here deal with the Psalms. The first is just the Psalms. This was a modern translation. Again, modern, I'm talking late 1960s, but given this is the Psalms, modern is obviously relative. And the second is the Psalms in English. Some of these are just direct translations, and some of these are works that have taken inspiration from the Psalms. But we include in this edition Sir Thomas Wyatt, William Shakespeare, again John Milton, again John Donne, again Thomas Hardy, and I told you she would be coming back, the Countess of Pembroke. As I said, some of these are just more modern translations of some of the Psalms. Some of them are poems inspired, and almost viewing King David as a classic alternative figure to the Greeks and the Romans. But there you go, 10 works this week. Again, another whistle-stop tour of the apparently unloved. But back next week. There were no Q's with R. Until then.